This is the People's Water Board Coalition Water Wednesday webcast for November 17th, 2021.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to the People's Water Board Water Wednesday. We meet every week. We get together and have really, really important conversations about water struggles throughout Michigan and throughout the country and throughout the world. And I'm so grateful to be joined with wonderful co-hosts that have been in the water struggle with me for a very long time. Charlotte Willis is with us. This is her first Water Wednesdays webcast. Welcome, Charlotte.
Hey.
And Nicole Hill is with us. And Rosalind Walker is with us.
Hello.
And we are joined today by Shailly Barnes. So Shailly is a lifelong organizer, and she works with the Poor People's Campaign. She's the policy director at Cairo Center and the Poor People's Campaign. And she's joining us today to talk about nationwide water shutoffs. It's a really, really important conversation to have right now. So please share this out and make comments, and we'll be answering those and sharing lots of information in the comment section below. Welcome, Shailly.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having these conversations and for inviting me on today.
It's like I said, it's such an important conversation to have, the urgency of it. And so we're just going to get right into it. Shailly, I know you do a lot of research about poverty issues throughout the nation. And we wanted to talk to you about national water shutoffs and what that looks like, so that we can really, because in Detroit, we've been in the middle of a water crisis for a long time. And masses shut off since 2013, since the winter of 2013 until now, masses shut off. The mayor did declare a moratorium at the end of 2020 because of COVID. So we're really, really concerned on what that's going to look like. And when it ends, because their bills are going to be so monstrous and so large. So let's get right into it. What's it look like, Shailly?
Yeah, so thanks for opening us up and again, just having these conversations in a regular way. I wanted to actually take a step back and share this map with you from before the pandemic, actually. Let me pull it up here. So this is what the map of water shutoffs look like before the pandemic. The darker areas, the darkest areas, are the places in the country that were at high risk of losing their access to water. And you can see in some places it doesn't look like there's all that much, but if you zoom in over here on Detroit, Michigan, you could see how dark it is, and how all of those places, but you see that darkness all over the country. And so this is what the conditions were like before the pandemic hit. And, as you were saying, Valerie Jean, in Detroit alone, there were over 100,000 shutoffs in the past years. And once the pandemic hit, the CDC was recommending hand washing, regular and thorough hand washing, as one of the main preventative measures against COVID-19. But due to these shutoffs, due to the vulnerability of millions and millions of people, this basic public health measure was unavailable to just thousands upon thousands of households. And I believe Michigan and Detroit were the first state and city to announce a moratorium on shutoffs in the pandemic. And because there was no national moratorium ever, there still has never been a national moratorium on water shutoffs. 800 localities, local governments, and 34 state governments followed suit once Michigan and Detroit did that. And some of these moratoriums on shutoffs lasted just a couple of months. Some of them lasted longer. And kind of at the peak of the pandemic, this is what it looked like in terms of shutoff. So that's what you could see that in March 2020, you see these blue states had different moratoriums in place against water and utility shutoffs. The red ones never had anything. But because of that, because of these moratoriums, they protected millions and millions of people, according to the American Journal of Preventative Medicine. Over 1.6 million households in California were protected from having their water shut off. 500,000 people in Virginia, hundreds of thousands of people in New Jersey and North Carolina, just all over the country. And again, if there had been a national moratorium, we would have seen even greater protections. It's estimated that, as many as almost 500,000 infections could have been reduced. Thousands of lives could have been saved. Now, these moratoriums were temporary. Most of them expired by the end of 2020. Some are left standing or kind of lingering on, but basically 2/3 of the US population is now at risk of having their water shut off. And that sounds very dramatic, but you may not even think you're at risk or realize you're at risk. But unless one of these moratoriums are in place, given the high levels of unemployment, given the fact that we still don't have living wages, the federal minimum wage is still just $7.25. Given the mountains of debt that households are facing, the risk of a water shutoff is very real for many, many more people than we think. And that includes, so I was looking at some of these numbers yesterday. Utility debt, which also includes water debt, has, but also electric, gas, and others, it went from $12 billion before the pandemic to $32 billion by the end of 2020. And so these shutoffs have actually resumed in every state except for Washington, except for New Jersey, California, and New York.
And when you look at it, it's like it's tripled. It didn't double, it tripled.
In terms of the debt, that's right. And so, so if you look at, this is the last map I'll show you in terms of what's in place now. Sorry, just give me a second. In terms of what's in place now, in terms of these moratoriums, you can see that it's far less than what is needed. It's only in these 3 blue states. I'm not even sure California and Wyoming have them anymore, but or Wyoming, but New York, New Jersey, and California are the only places that have protections against shutoffs. All these other places, many have expired. Those are the ones in yellow. Some are voluntary, but those, who knows how long those are going to last. And so we're in a really dire situation. And what we do know is that as of June 2021, over 1 million households in 17 states have experienced a shutoff since last March. So, and all of this is going to be underreported. Duke Energy is saying that 2% of their customers in Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia have been shut off. So that's already over 3.5 million people. 3.5 million shutoffs. And so even with the stimulus payments from last year, even with some people back at work, it's not as if it's not as if there are protections in place to protect against these. And, the other issue is that there isn't really good data collection. Utility commissions aren't required to disclose who's being shut off. But, again, we kind of piece together the information that we have. And according to the Household Pulse survey, which is a survey that the census puts out during the pandemic, 37 million people were unable to pay an energy bill in full over the past 12 months. So that's a lot higher than any of the numbers that we're hearing or seeing, but that may be really the extent of the people who are vulnerable to this. And it's very concerning. Yeah.
You know what? The bills have doubled too. The water bills have doubled. Even during the pandemic when they was giving us help and putting us on program, the bills have doubled. I know my bills.
Your water rates have been up 3 times.
Yeah, I mean the water bills are high, so you got to go to these different programs to see if you can get the help to pay your water bill. It's ridiculous because some back there, they're not worried about the poor people. The businesses, they get the break. I know that for a fact. A lot of buildings out there make lots of money for water bills, but they sticking it to the poor people, and that's not right. And the bills are double. The bills are double.
The bills have been going up for quite some time, even prior to the pandemic. So in actuality, even though it's wrong, the water department is just conducting business as usual.
Yes.
The rates were going up prior to the pandemic, but the fear is, especially in Michigan, I don't know if this occurred I'm pretty sure it probably occurred in other cities as well. But even prior to the pandemic, we had a huge hepatitis A outbreak. And that was directly related to the water shutoffs that were occurring throughout the city. And that was treated like it was non-existent. Like our local government treats the residents like they're hallucinating when they say these issues are occurring and that it's directly related to water shutoffs.
That's why we got to fight for, that's why we got to fight for the water affordability plan. We created it. The People's Water Board created it. It's being used other places throughout the country, and it's working. So we know that it works. I mean, we have to fight for the water affordability plan. Shailly, are there places that are implementing water affordability plans right now, or that you know of?
There are, I think, in parts of Philadelphia, places in New Jersey. I mean, we are seeing this plan, again, that was created in Detroit out of the water crisis that we've seen unfold there for years, and it's being implemented in other places. But I think, some of the issues that you're raising now are, it's not enough just to have a moratorium on shutoffs. We need relief for all this debt that's been accumulated that people can't pay. You need, living wages so people can afford to pay these kinds of bills, but it's got to not be privatized. Like all of those things have to be in place. And I know that I've heard from folks in Detroit and other places that, when water does get shut off, sometimes that infrastructure is also damaged through the shut off. And then, Nicole, like you're saying, even in a short amount of time, whatever gets collected in the stagnant water in those pipes then gets flushed through into people's homes. So it's a multiple layer crisis. And to think that it's just a question, these eviction moratoriums were a piece of the bigger problem. But if we think that this is just a public health issue because of the pandemic, then we're missing the larger picture here. And I think that's really something that we have to hold on to.
Definitely.
Right, because the water shut-offs has been going on way before the pandemic. And then when you say, Shailly, that it messes up the infrastructure, yes, because when someone's water get cut off at the home, it's not saying that the tenant can get it back on, the landlord can get it back on. So this house might be empty because it can't get no water. So now it's going to be sitting there and just falling apart. You're going to have people, strugglers taking different things off the home, and then it just become abandoned and be another blight,
It's not even just that. They hired a construction company to shut people's water off. So they come with a sledgehammer, literally, to shut people's water off. And then when there was the statewide moratorium hit, they couldn't turn everybody back on because they had ruined the infrastructure on water with sledgehammer. They didn't give me a break. So
what we know now is, even if the President Biden signed this infrastructure bill into law a couple days ago, that funds some replacing of lead pipes, but not everything we need. And I think if we're not actually taking into account, like you're saying, this infrastructure question in its full extent, that's not going to help. Anything that's in there isn't going to help kind of rebuild what's damaged, ensure that clean water is getting to everybody, and ensure, without the Water Act, that it's affordable, that people can actually access that clean water. And so, this is the full extent of the struggle around water that, has been going on in Detroit, across the country. And, as you saw from that first map, is affecting just thousands and thousands of communities and millions of people. This is not just a question that one community is facing. It is a national crisis.
That's right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I think that's why it's so important to have right now, because I don't think people realize that we are in the national water crisis and it's as bad as it is. And then we've got cities all over Michigan right now. We've got Benton Harbor, Highland Park, Hamtramck, parts of Detroit.
Oak Park, all over Michigan.
Water,
serious bad water, like the
water
water
they can't use it. So it just don't make no sense. Because like you guys were saying about the infrastructure, Okay, when they do this and they destroy those pipes of things, and if they try to put them back, they're not looking at the problem with the lead pipe. They just put them back in there, okay, and everybody getting lead in their home. And that's ridiculous because there's too many cities out here like Ben Harbor, Highland Park. It's got lead in their water and it's unsafe for everybody. I'm scared to drink. I would not drink it water. I drink bottled water. But the problem
And bottled water is not any different.
no, it's not. And plus they sit up and say, well, we doing all this and we doing all that. But only the rich and people that got money is getting those benefits.
Corporate.
Yeah, corporate is getting those benefits, not us. So I think it's so wrong that they put it on the poor people and the residents. And then after a while, they might end up like in hot, okay? And all those Highland Park like that. Because the simple fact is, we don't have nobody looking out for us, so we have to do it and get it done. And for us to have our water affordability bill put out there.
Yeah, because it's not just corporate, it's rich people as well. So it's not just about, us battling corporations that get away with unpaid water bills and high cost bills that they can dispute. It's also rich people. I mean, you can see evidence of that just from videos around water that have been created where they had people that worked for Dan Gilbert saying, well, I want to see these people's bank accounts and see what they do with their money. And they literally felt like they were entitled to go into poor people's bank accounts and see what they do with their money. That is, if they have a bank account.
Well, this is the issue, again, water gives us a way to see all these other issues that where the same thing is unfolding. During the pandemic, the wealthiest people and entities in the country saw their wealth go up by over $2 trillion. Hundreds of thousands of people have died, but really just a very small number of people have become even wealthier by $2 trillion. I mean, these are numbers that are bigger than the whole plan that is being pushed through Congress now in terms of Build Back Better. And it's all going just to a very small number of people. So everything you're saying, Nicole, in terms of, everybody at Charlotte, in terms of why are poor people are bearing the brunt of this. They've borne the brunt of this pandemic and all the pandemics that brought us to this point so far.
Definitely. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, even when you look at it, like even the Build Back Better plan, it's a good effort, but it's still going to put more money in the wealthy people's pockets.
Yes, it will.
Do you see any kind of well, I know that it hasn't been passed this, like the human part of the bill, right? The only thing that's been passed is the infrastructure bill. And it's even kind of iffy if it's going to make sure that there's water infrastructure that is going to be put in place that saves people literally their lives.
Yeah, that's right.
The human part of it, that part of the bill, do you think that we have a chance of getting that passed so that we can get social programs put in? Because the way it looks now, it doesn't look like it's going to
work.
Even solve any of the problems that we have.
Right.
I mean, it is a step forward. So some of the measures that we've seen already that have made people's lives a little bit better, like the child tax credit. Or the earned income tax credit going to low-wage workers who don't have children, have paid leave. Can you imagine? There 18 million people who didn't have paid leave in a pandemic, and so giving people 4 weeks of paid leave, that is significant. And so right now, what we can tell is that these negotiations are going back and forth still. They're being held up by bad economic arguments that are saying, well, now, with inflation, is it wise to spend all this money on these programs? And the answer is yes. Economists are saying that, one of the the things that poor and low income people feel the most is a rise in your rent, right? The rise in your housing payments. And, we need programs that are going to ease those payments. We need things like these programs to go through now. And any of this inflation, that's not because there's too much money floating around in the hands of poor people. That's because, during the pandemic, we stopped doing, face-to-face services. We stopped buying things face to face. We shifted everything to online or other ways, and that's some of the impact. These
And if we don't watch that, that's what the government want. They don't want us to organize. They don't want us to be together. So
that's right.
without the coronavirus, without anything to keep these people from getting together.
Right. That's right. It's just another way to keep people disorganized.
That's also an attack on the poor, because yes, a lot of people did go to online, but a lot of poor people didn't have that option. So they still had to get out and risk being exposed to try to go to a grocery store, to try to go to a clothing store or something and get supplies that they needed for their household if they could find it. Because there are a lot of people that are poor and they don't have bank accounts or they don't have a debit card, and you need that to shop online.
Or they might not have internet.
That too.
And then when they went to those stores, the price gouging, there are all these other reasons, these other things that were happening. And then to block this spending by saying it's not good for the economy, that's just wrong. It's just wrong. And so there are some parts of this bill that will continue to make life a little bit better. It's not enough. We know it's not enough. There's not enough protections for immigrants, for undocumented people, for Indigenous people, like all of these things. It's insufficient. And yet, we're going to fight for this, and then we're going to keep pushing for more because what else can we do?
Right.
And also with all the programs put in place, we need to be able to follow these programs and know what the people need. They might say, that's just like with the Flint people, they saying that all those kids that was poisoned, if they don't have a high level of lead in a system, that they won't be getting award money or things like that. They went through these things too. So we have to make sure all these policies and these things that they want us to do and jump through these hoops, that we don't have to get this money.
That's right. This isn't a question just for quote unquote policy experts to figure out. That's another kind of way that the people whose lives are actually impacted by this don't have a say in what's happening. It's important for the People's Water Board, for the Michigan campaign, for everyone to break down and understand what's in this and what's not. Because that's the other way that we're being sold crumbs and told it's the whole loaf, right? And that's we can't accept that.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
If we're going to look out for each other and in the times ahead, we have to. And we're going to have to fight for our basic needs. And that's, it's disturbing, but we're going to have to do it.
That's right.
And we're going to have to figure out ways to take care of each other, because the system simply is not doing that. And it's not going to do that. It's not going to be reformed to do that. It's functioning exactly the way that it was designed to function at this point, which is pretty freaking scary.
Government wasn't created for poor people anyway. The vast majority of people that live in poverty are people of color. And this country wasn't created for us anyway. And if you look at it, like even the bare minimum that they call themselves doing to assist people in the midst of the pandemic can't even be done correctly. There are so many people that I personally know in this city, in surrounding areas, that have never gotten unemployment. They have never gotten a child tax credit because of a simple case of fraud and it not being addressed in a timely manner by that particular governmental agency. That's ridiculous. You're not working, but you can't get unemployment because they didn't do their due diligence when they had this rash of unemployment and let other people go through without showing proper identification. And then they fraudulently taking someone else's unemployment. So now this person is sitting here with no way to take care of their family.
People of color and communities of color were hit terribly hard. But if you look at the Poor People's Campaign stats, it's across the board. 140 million people. It's across the board. It's not just communities of color. But
but I'm saying the vast majority of communities that are targeted for this type of behavior and actions are communities of color.
That's
You
right.
can see that with the water crisis. Flint, the largely populated community of color. Highland Park, largely population of color. Benton Harbor, largely a population
Black
of
and brown
color.
cities for sure.
It's Black and brown cities.
Well, and
They
this is, I
target-
think, what you're also picking up, Nicole, is, this kind of targeted systemic racism
Yes.
that, targets poor Black and brown communities and poor white communities. But, specifically when it looks at poor Black and brown communities, then what happens there then affects everyone else who's there, right? Like,
Yeah.
And so, and you see this with voter suppression, you see this with emergency management, that, they target, minority majority cities, and then implement, a whole set of reforms that affect the broader segment of poor people across race. And so I think we have to be very mindful and watch very carefully the way that systemic racism operates, and connect that to these broader attacks on poor people across race of the 140 million. And you're exactly right. And to then, develop the organizing infrastructures and systems that bring our people together. Because, unless we're brought together, then we'll continue to be pit against each other. And that's a danger also that we can't risk.
Right.
We can't do that right now. We have to, across the board, come together as poor and low wealth people to fight this and to get just our basic needs met at this point. And the looming, already in a water crisis, but the looming, the ending of the moratorium, especially here in Detroit, has me extremely concerned, not just for my community and my family, but for the whole city. It's coming out of a pandemic where we lost all of these people, and then suffering mass water shutoffs and max tax foreclosures back to back right after.
And a lot of people have also lost their home with the weather and the storms and the flooding, and a lot of people living in hotels, so we have to look out for everybody, not just the people that's lacking water. It's all around water. It's all around stability and having somewhere to live with clean water, so that's what we're working on.
That's right.
People that's talking about not in Congress and in the White House, whatever, none of those people be without water, anything. Okay, how can they sit up and judge and say, well, these people don't need this and these people don't need that? They ain't never dealt with it, and they don't.
Because back to I'm rich and I can afford to pay this.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
You can't even get them to participate in National Day Without Water, and that's just one day.
This is the other I think point that we got to keep pushing, is that this isn't a question of whether you can afford it or not. If we base water, housing, clean air on our ability to pay for it, which is how everything is structured right now, then that's just it's wrong, and it's not at all what water is, as you all have been saying, a human right. Housing is a human right. Healthcare is a human right. And what that means is it must be accessible regardless of your ability to pay for it. And we just have to push back against that mentality that you only get it if you can pay for it, because that's part of what's behind all of these policies and this policy violence that poor and low-income people are facing right now and have been for decades and generations.
That's why Reverend Barber is always like, this is a moral issue. This is for us. This is our morals. This is what do we value in each other? How do we value each other? And it's a really good way to kind of end it all. But
and Shailly,
thank you.
Yeah, it is definitely, even though we have to realize, sadly, this country was not built on a moral foundation.
Unfortunately. But that doesn't mean we can't.
That's what I say, we fight for. Did you see my shirt for today?
We have to know our
enemy.
Yeah. Have to fight for ourselves because they know.
We got to take care of each other.
To come together on the issue for poor folk, and every poor folk get together, and we go down there with March on Washington. That's a dream. I wish we could do that. You know?
That's
Oh, you
it. We're going We're going in June.
Yes.
Oh,
We're going
okay.
in June.
Well,
We're going to
hey,
be there
I ain't know
for the
nothing
water
about that
issue.
one.
And I think to take this up, to reframe, what, and to live into the promise of the country we have yet to be. Just because we haven't been it yet doesn't mean we can't be, and that's what we got to fight for now and for the generations ahead of us. So I just really appreciate all of you.
Yeah, and tell Charlotte June 2022 now. It was June 2020, but it's June
right.
2022 now.
June 18th,
It's on the
2022.
18th, brother. Sorry about that.
Kelly,
March on Washington.
Yes.
I got us all on the bus.
Okay.
Right.
thank you
And I'm
so-
getting a whole bus.
well,
I'll
it's
be there with y'all.
And I know that everybody has an intensely busy schedule. This is actually the third meeting I've had today. We really thank you for being here. We really appreciate the work that you do with the Poor People's Campaign and Cairo Center and fighting for the rights of the people who are some of the most vulnerable in our country. And that's a message to all of our viewers. If you have any questions or you want to find out more information about the Poor People's Campaign, you can go to the Poor People's Campaign on Facebook. You can Google the Poor People's Campaign and find out more information.
Campaign.org.
Yep. And you can get involved. And I always say this, and this is always my mantra. Everyone has a purpose and a place and a plan to better our life. Maybe you're not the organizer. Maybe you can come out and support an action, or maybe you can donate. There's always some way that you can get involved and help to make this world a little better place for the people that are coming after us. Again, Shailly, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you taking the time. Thank you to my co-host, and let me not forget to thank our tech guy behind the scenes, Lou.
Thanks, Lou.
Really appreciate
Thanks, Lou.
Thanks, Lou.
Everyone have a blessed day and stay afloat.
Okay. Have a blessed one,
Bye.
guys.
Bye. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you.